Today we're going to take a look at The Scream by Norwegian artist Edvard Munch. To kick us off, here's a quote by author Martha Tedeschi. Whistler's Mother, Wood's American Gothic, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, and Edvard Munch's The Scream have all achieved something that most paintings have not. They communicate a specific meaning almost immediately to every viewer. These few works have successfully made the transition from the elite realm of the museum visitor to the enormous venue of popular culture. Let's talk a little bit about Munch first, and then we'll learn more specifically about The Scream. Edvard Munch was born in Norway and was exposed early on to the pain and stress that illness can cause. Both his mother and his sister died of tuberculosis before Munch was 14, and he was chronically ill himself. Abandoning the pursuit of engineering, he decided to become an artist. He worked with an artist in Norway who encouraged him to create what were called soul paintings, or works that explored his own psychological and emotional state. Munch then began spending time in France during the late 1880s. And we know, in Paris at that time, the most avant-garde artists were the Impressionists. Naturally, Munch began painting scenes from the world around him, showing the influence of artists like Monet and Renoir. Eventually, though, Munch began to turn away from Impressionism and develop a style all his own. He combined his experiences with sickness, grief, anger, anxiety, and death with the bold color and symbolism that we've seen in the work of Paul Gauguin, putting to use his early experiences creating those soul paintings. He was deeply influenced by the work of Vincent van Gogh, who he felt was able to warp his paintings into expressions of inner turmoil. In the early 1880s, Munch began working on a series that he later called The Frieze of Life, a poem about life, love, and death. He completed 22 canvases that explored themes of humanity, mortality, and sexuality, completing works with titles like Jealousy, Anxiety, Separation, Ashes, and more. The Scream was created as a part of this series. Munch painted The Scream in France, but he was recollecting a time back in Norway. This is a painting of a memory and the sensations from that memory. He wrote about the experience in France, stating, "I was walking down the road with two friends when the sun set. Suddenly, the sky turned as red as blood. I stopped and leaned against the fence, feeling unspeakably tired. Tongues of fire and blood stretched over the bluish-black fjord. My friends went on walking while I lagged behind, shivering with fear. Then I heard the enormous, infinite Scream of Nature." The Scream of Nature was the original German title for this work, while in Norway it was called The Shriek, and we've come to know it collectively as just The Scream. Munch created this work multiple times, 2 pastels, 2 paintings, and also in multiple lithographs. The version on our list was painted in tempera on cardboard in 1910, about 17 years after the very first pastel version was created. That Munch created this work many times shows his obsessive desire to continuously explore specific themes. In fact, most of his paintings within the Frieze of Life have multiple variations in pastels, lithographs, woodblock prints, and sketches. One of his later works, Girls on the Jetty, he actually created 18 versions of it. The Scream is perhaps the best example of Munch's style and a movement that would come to be known as Expressionism. We see his use of bold color and sinuous lines that create an aura around his figures, a technique he employs in other works. We see his ability to warp reality. Munch is able to show us his inner experience similar to how Van Gogh was able to. In fact, the quality of line work in the sky might even remind us a little bit of Van Gogh's Starry Night, but perhaps with greater fluidity. So what precipitated this event that Munch experienced? The color changes in the sky are possibly linked to the eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia, which caused brilliant sunsets throughout the world for weeks and months afterward. This version of The Scream was completed in 1910. 2 years after Munch had a mental breakdown. His acute anxiety was intensified by excessive drinking, and he checked himself into a clinic. After some time there, he returned to Norway in 1909, and he wrote that he felt more stable, and his work became decidedly less pessimistic and more colorful. He wrote, "For several years, I was almost mad. You know my picture, The Scream? I was stretched to the limit. Nature was screaming in my blood. After that, I gave up hope of ever being able to love again." Munch survived the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 and lived through both World War I and World War II. Throughout World War II, his work was declared degenerate by the Nazi Party, and the 82 works that he had in German museums were confiscated to be mocked and destroyed. 71 of these works were recovered, including The Scream, but the other 11 are lost to us. The Nazi Party eventually occupied Norway, and Munch lived in fear that his artwork would be confiscated and destroyed. He died in 1944 and bequeathed his artwork to the city of Oslo, which is now home to the Munch Museum. It houses an incredible collection of the prolific artist, including 1,100 paintings, 4,500 drawings, and 18,000 prints. Edvard Munch's work was highly personal, and to this day, it's still very relatable. His work goes on to influence the German Expressionists and Wassily Kandinsky, subjects in upcoming videos. And The Scream is among Starry Night and Les Demoiselles d'Avignon as the masterpieces of modern art whose influence cannot be overstated. As always, if you have any questions about The Scream, don't hesitate to ask either on Google Classroom or through my email. I'm here to help.